to hand over to Michelle Hansen, who's a principal at Slalom. I'll let her introduce herself, and she's going to talk to us about custom metadata. So over to you, Michelle.
Well, good evening for everyone in England and the UK. Over here, it's about just afternoon, so I'm joining you from the US. So today we're going to talk about custom metadata, and I know I'm on a pretty short schedule here, so I'm going to try and keep within my allotted time. But really, it's the ultimate Swiss Army knife. It has so many different uses that it's just really cool to put this tool in your tool belt. So a little bit about me. I'm very active in the Salesforce community. I have presented at a number of different user groups and events. I actually co-lead my own user group in Iowa, so I'm thrilled to be able to support other user group leaders around the world. I'm part of the planning committee for a couple of different Dreamin' events here in the US. And of course, I am honored to be part of the Salesforce MVP program as well. So thank you for inviting me to come and present. But you're really here to hear content, so let's talk about that. So we'll talk about what custom metadata is if you've never heard of it or don't really know. Then we're going to go through a sample use case, and I'm going to demo it for you. And then we'll talk about some additional use cases to help you get inspired and start thinking about ideas of how you can use this in your orgs. Okay, so first of all, what is custom metadata? Is anybody here familiar with that? This is really not going to work well on virtual, so that's okay. But I saw Eugene raise his hand, so thank you. So custom metadata is a way for you to build records that are designed to control how Salesforce works, not to hold data that you want your users to interact with. So this is different than using a custom object like accounts or opportunities or standard objects. You may create your own custom. These are slightly different. Because they're metadata and not data, they're deployable from a sandbox. So that great presentation we just had about deployment tools, you can use any of those to actually deploy your custom metadata information from sandbox to production or a package from one dev org to another. It's also available for you to reference in a variety of places: formula fields, validation rules, flow, and Apex. This actually started out as a developer tool, truly, but there is a lot that you can do with it as an admin. So it's great that we're finally getting some visibility into how we as admins can do this. And if you've ever used a custom label or a custom setting to hold information, this is a more flexible way that you can do that. That gives you a little bit more versatility. And truly, it's as easy as building a custom object. So if you have done that in Salesforce, you can work with custom metadata. So some of the things that you would use this for: mapping data or building relationships. So if you want to map a country or a county or a province to a specific region, that's not a standard field in Salesforce. So if I want the US and Canada to be part of my AMER region, but I want France and England and Scotland and Italy to all be part of EMEA, I can build a mapping in custom metadata that says this country belongs to this region, and then leverage that throughout my org. You can use it to create business rules. So who should certain alerts go to, for example, and we'll use that in our demo later. You can also use this to create master data. So I have actually used it to hold data that I want to use to create a variety of different types of records with default values that change. So while when you create a field, you can give it a default value, or you can write a fairly complicated formula to try and give it different default values, you can also use custom metadata to hold that information and then use that when you're creating records. And then finally, if you're working with integrations, storing API keys securely is also something that you can do with custom metadata. There are a few things that you can't do with it, and you need to be aware of these when you're making the decision what tool to use. So first of all, because it's metadata and not data, you can't report on it. So for example, I was asked, I had a list of all of these different record templates that we could create, and someone asked me to run a report or a list of them, and I went, I can't. All right, had to come up with a different solution. So they are also not able to be created in mass or uploaded in mass, like with Data Loader. Again, because it's not data, it's metadata. You may be able to do this with an API if you're a developer, but for those of us who are configuration only admins, that doesn't really work. It's a little bit difficult to navigate. It does not have a really nice page layout and list views like a standard object would. It does have a list view, but if you get into a record, it's a little bit more difficult to get back out of it. Also, not every field type that you get on your custom objects are supported. So you cannot do auto number. You can't do multi-select pick lists, for example. Encrypted is not supported. And if you have a lookup field, it can only look up to another custom metadata object. It can't look up to anything like user, for example. Okay, so I said it's more flexible than custom labels and custom settings. So here's kind of a little table that we put together to help you understand when you should use which tool. So custom metadata and custom labels are both metadata, custom settings are data. So you can move the first two as part of your change sets between orgs, and with the last one, you actually have to recreate them or use Data Loader to get it in. Custom labels and custom settings, if you're using them in flows, they're accessible with a global variable, but it's going to cost you a query in Flow to look up that custom metadata object for right now. And then custom metadata really gives you the ability to have a framework like you can with an object, multiple fields of different types, and so will custom settings, but custom labels is literally like just a single field, a text field that you're going to put information in. So it's important to think about these different trade-offs and determine which you're going to use for your specific use case. Okay, so for me, that's great. Talking about theory, fine. All right, you told me what it is. I don't understand it. So usually for me, seeing an example helps. So that's what we're going to do. So our use case is that we want to avoid hard coding information in flows. Now, you've probably all heard, do not hard code an ID anywhere. Don't put it in a flow. Don't put it in your process. Don't write it into your validation rule. Well, there's more things than that that you should really avoid hard coding. Things that can change over time and are likely to change over time. Because technically anything could change, right? But things that are more likely to change is what we want to identify for moving outside of hard-coded and into custom metadata. So for example, sending notifications to specific individuals. So I have 3 different examples. If we have a support manager who's overseeing our support team and we have a case that comes in and our SLA says we need to have someone take ownership of that case within 10 minutes. So if 10 minutes pass and it's still in new status, I want to notify someone that that case is still pending. Now you might be thinking, all right, why do I need custom metadata for this? Why don't I just go put a checkbox on the user record that says support manager, check the box and use that? That's fair. Thought about that. But then what if we also need a sales manager to do this and a business development manager for this? So now all of a sudden I have 3 checkboxes on a record. That's not great. So somebody says, well, then use a pick list and pick. Okay, that's fine until all of a sudden our business development manager goes on maternity leave and the sales manager agrees to pick up that responsibility, but it's a pick list and I can only have one value. And do not even suggest to me that I should use a multi-select pick list. Not going to happen. Just not going to happen. So instead, I can avoid burning the fields on the user. I can use a custom metadata object to set this up and hold it and reference that record instead. And it's easy as updating a record field when I need to change it. All right, so it's demo time. Let me pull up my org here. Got to make sure we're doing on time. So in setup, I am going to just search for meta, and it's going to pull up our custom metadata. So when I pull up the custom metadata screen, it's going to show me all of the objects. So these are basically custom metadata objects. You can think of them very similarly to just a regular custom object. And so I have built one here called routing recipient. And so this is going to tell me who I want to route certain things to. I have the standard fields that you would get with anything that you create from a custom object. And then I have the ability to build my own custom fields. So again, email address, first or group name, last name, the user or group ID. Those are the fields that I felt was important for me to capture for what I wanted to do with this. So as you can see, they're all text. I can give them a length, obviously. I don't need more than 18 characters for that 18 character ID, so I can limit that field here. So, and this is as simple as creating a custom object. So now that we have created the object, now I'm going to create my records. And so this is where I'm going to go into my manage routing recipients. And so again, I can have several different recipients here, different records for different cases, scenarios. So we're going to use our unassigned case. And if I come in here, I just gave it a label. And so it also has an API name with the underscore here. I can specify an email address. I can specify the first and last name. And if I wanted to, I could put in the user or group ID, but it does not have to be a Salesforce user. I can assign this to any user or any email address that I have. So even if they're outside of Salesforce, this is supported. So, and just to underline that, my user in here has an email of Michelle does Salesforce, but when we're talking about our custom metadata, we're going to be sending it to my other Gmail account, which is not tied to my user in Salesforce at all. Okay, so 5 minutes left. We'll go through this very quickly. I have a flow here where I'm going to say, all right, if we create a case, so anytime it's created, I have two things happening. Immediately, I'm going to run through all of my open opportunities, and I'm going to notify by email the owners of my opportunity that a case has been created for an account they're trying to sell to. We don't like unhappy people. You shouldn't ask people who have problems with your product to buy more of your product until you fix their problems. But if after 10 minutes, we have not touched their case, or for demo purposes, we're going to use 2, I want an email to go to the support manager. And so how I built this is we determine after 2 minutes if the case status is still new. Then we're using this get records to go to my custom metadata object, which you'll notice has the suffix of MDT instead of __C. So we're going to do this. I'm going to find the one with the label with the name of unassigned case. And then when I put this into my email, I'm using the email address field from that custom metadata record here as my recipient email address. All right, so we're going to go over here to cases. We're going to cheat, and I'm going to clone a case real quick. So we're going to clone this. They're pretty unhappy because now performance is not adequate for the 4th consecutive week. So, all right, case 130 has been created. So now we just need to wait 2 minutes for all of our emails to show up. And to prove that our flow is running, I am actually an opportunity owner. So United Oil and Gas Corp has a couple of different opportunities that are not closed won. So over here on this one, if I do a quick refresh, I have my first email. Then a new case has been opened for United Oil and Gas. And because I am an opportunity owner, I get that notification. And at this point, I'm just trying to burn another minute. So, but yeah, I was able to just give it a simple subject, which is kind of cool because you can mix regular text along with your variables. So I can pull the case number from the record. Then also I can use a text template to actually put in the body of the email. So it's nicely formatted. It's got some bold so I can see that. I can actually include a link here so I can get right to that case. And I can have the spacing the way I want it. It's not just a plain text email where everything gets squished together. So that's kind of the beautiful thing about using text templates. All right, so we have about another minute to wait. So while we're waiting, I'm going to hop back over to our presentation real quick. So some additional things that you can use this for. If you have a zip or a postal code and you want to map that to a county, I know that's something here in the US we do quite frequently. That's not standard functionality. If you have very complicated assignment rules for account or opportunity teams or even leads, you can build in your assignment structure. So maybe it's by state or by county or by region or by some other combination that gets too complicated for lead assignment rules or other assignment rules, you can do that here. When we do development, I use t-shirt sizes. Oh, that's an extra large. My boss hated it. My boss is like, can you please tell me how many hours that is? So I'm like, okay. So if I say it's a small project, that's probably, I don't know, 2 days. If I say it's an extra large project, I'm looking at probably 2 weeks. So I was able to create a mapping where I was able to put a t-shirt size in, and it would automatically then in a formula field pull in the hour range that was tied to that specific t-shirt size. Creating record templates. So again, if you want to create basically templated information and records, instead of being able to use default values, if you've got multiple different types that need to be created in the same record type, you can use it for that. I've used it to map pick list values to records. So we were tracking competitors. And so I had a pick list with the names of all of my competitors on an object, but they decided they actually wanted to have a related list that linked an account to another account. And we tracked our competitors and accounts. So I used that to automate it so they wouldn't have to create both the pick list and the record. I also use custom metadata to build my own miniature version of CPQ. It was one of those things where I didn't need CPQ, but I needed more flexible pricing than what I could do with just Sales Cloud. All right, so we have had our 2-minute wait. So I'm going to pop back over here and we're going to go to my email address. Do a quick refresh here. Oh, look, I've sent myself a message that I still have a case in new status. So I'm not real nice to myself internally. It's like the case is still new, fix it. So, but this is where I was able to grab an email address and send an email to someone who is completely unrelated to my Salesforce org. So, all right. So finally, this deck was made available to the group, so we'll make sure to get this out. But here are a number of resources that you can use to learn more about custom metadata types and some ideas on how you might be able to use them, as well as a little bit on why it's quite so bad to hard code things in Salesforce and what you can do to get around that. So, all right. Sorry, 2 minutes over. With that, I'll pass it back to you all. But thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.